move towards getting ready for our study today on Wednesday. We are getting ready for YouTube Live. We are still getting ready. I will be ready to talk in a second. Thank you, everyone, and welcome back to Topeka and for joining us for our Torah Club this Wednesday, the 24th of June. We are still in the book of Job. In fact, we're mid-chapter in chapter 3. We had such a long conversation about verse 16 of chapter 3 that, as I understand it, you can tell me if you've got a different spot. Is that where do you have us?
Yeah.
You have us
in the middle of chapter 3.
Yeah, 317. Okay. So we just went and we'll talk very briefly about 16 again, but we were covering that and we ran out of time, and so we're still in the middle of chapter 3. I will go ahead and share my screen for anyone who's joining us online, and so that people here, if they want to see our commentary, can do so. And since we are studying Torah, we will start with our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. If you say amen, you get full credit. Exactly. Okay, so again, in verse 16, we were doing some comparison between Job and Kohelet, where he said, or why was I not like Job in his sorrow? Why was I not like a buried stillbirth, like babies who never saw the light? In other words, it would have been better. It's kind of an inversion in some ways of Kohelet's. It would be better that you be a stillbirth than to waste your life. In this case, he's saying it would have been better to be a stillbirth than for you to have given all of that to me and then taken it away. It's kind of his own. This is his own. Verse 16 is his own version of better to have loved, again, an inversion of better to have loved than lost, and than to never have loved at all. And then, of course, my favorite thing from Men in Black, if you didn't see the movie from the late 90s with Will Smith, agent Tommy Lee Jones, I forget whatever letter his agent thing is, but Tommy Lee Jones says that or has that said to him by Will Smith, and he says back to him, "You should try it sometime." The idea being, of course, it's easier to repeat a platitude than it is to live through something deeply damaging to someone, and so this is his sentiment too. That it's very hard to live through damaging things. Okay, so we pick up at verse 17. There the wicked cease from troubling. There rest those whose strength is spent. Right? Who's he talking? The dead. Again, right, right. Right. So if he were dead, if he were in the grave, he wouldn't have to worry about this, right? The wicked don't do anything bad to anyone, and they don't have anything happen, and those who don't have any strength left, like he feels of himself, don't have to worry about that. They're not asked to give any strength. They can rest. 18. Prisoners are wholly at ease. They do not hear the taskmaster's voice. Again, remember that if you were in prison or whatever that was at the time, there was no such thing as prison in the ancient world. What were there? Slave labor until you were dead. So that's what he's referring to here. Right? So they're not, prisoners don't get beaten. Katan, the gadol, small and great alike are there, and the slave is free of his master. Right? Everyone is equal in death. Why does God give light to the sufferer and life to the bitter in spirit? Right? By the way, this is the question, and some people, I speak to people in the hospital sometimes, and I have spoken to people, including relatives of mine, I will say, where I see them and they're not doing that well, and maybe they're very advanced in age in their late 90s, and they say something to me like, it would be better to be done now. I don't feel like this is something that I'm enjoying anymore. And this is the question, essentially, that they're asking. They say, right, I'm suffering, but I still live. Right? Or in this case, that they would be the bitter in spirit. Light to the sufferer, right? Right? So, yeah. So in both of these is the same. To those who wait for death, but it does not come, who search for it more than treasure. Isn't that, again, that's what I'm talking about. These people, right? Who rejoice to exultation and are glad to reach the grave. Right? But those people, they live, he says. To the man who has lost his way, whom God has hedged about. Right? All of this is stated for myself. A man whose way is hidden, whose world has darkened, and against whom God has set a screen. Right? God has hedged before me. God has put something in my way so that he will no longer see, right? He's saying God has made it so that God is causing my suffering and has made it so God can't even see my suffering. God has placed, what the reason it says here is hedged, it has hedged about, it means literally placing hedges or something so that he is blocked in. It's his prison cell. God is choosing not to be able to see him.
It's interesting that,
or that he can no longer see God, one or the other.
I long for death, but suicide is not even a thought.
You're not allowed.
Yeah.
They get it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
You're just, it's never been allowed. In fact, there's the teaching in Judaism is so extremely clear that life is paramount and preserving your life is paramount. That you should even transgress the Torah to save your own life, except in 3 circumstances.
And the 3 are you don't deny God or
That's 1.
Sexual perversion.
You don't rape or allow yourself to be raped.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's going to get us thrown off YouTube because I said the word. But you don't do right. You don't allow yourself or someone. This applies. All of these apply in 2 directions. In other words, you can't do it, and you can't be forced to do it, and you can't have it done to you. You shouldn't have it done to you. So if they're going to kill you, or you do, the last one is actually specifically to other people, which is if somebody puts a gun to your head and says, shoot this other person or I'll kill you, you have to say, well, then pull, because I'm not going to do that. Those are the only 3 things that you should die rather than transgress. Otherwise, if they say, eat this bacon or I'll shoot you,
eat the bacon.
You eat it. You don't have any second thought. You go, yup, yum. Thank you. Can I go now? Right? Like, I mean, you're not supposed to keep doing it forever, but to get out of that situation, again, life is paramount. So, except in extreme situations, and again, those are situations identified by the rabbis as deeply, deeply entwined with kedusha, with holiness. That includes the sexual aspect of that. So yeah, the idea of killing, no, he's not going to do that. But yes, you're right. You would think if he's already saying these things that he would at least have already brought up the possibility, just to reject it. But he has yet to do that. Okay, verse 24. He lifnei lachmi. My groaning serves as my bread. My roaring pours forth as water. Right? And roaring, he means screams, right? It just comes out in a constant flow. That's what he's trying to give you the image of, right? If he were to open his mouth and water were like a fire hydrant, that's what his screams are like. Mm-hmm. He's really trying to paint you a picture of misery. And what is it? My groaning serves as my bread. He means he's in pain before he even takes a bite. All he feels is pain, and all he does is scream. Verse 25, for what I feared has overtaken me. What I dreaded has come upon me. I had no repose, no quiet, no rest. And trouble came. Right? In other words, he's saying he wasn't a nobody. He wasn't doing nothing. He was all these things, and yet these terrible things happen to him. So this was his first statement. His friends, remember, have come to sit with him. The nice thing they did, they sat with him 7 days. He didn't say a word. finally he offers this speech to them. And now we'll start chapter 4, where the friends will begin their responses. They will attempt to help. And as a rabbi who does pastoral care a lot, I want to throw in a note here to say the first thing they did, I think I said this before, was very pastorally astute. They sat and waited for him to speak. They didn't speak first. They didn't offer advice. They did that perfectly.
Mhm.
Now they're going to do some of the things you shouldn't really do when you're doing pastoral care. Now they're going to try. Well, the thing is, they're friends and they're trying to be helpful. Whether they are or not, I'll leave to you to decide. Maybe you think they are. Maybe you think they aren't. Okay. So the Ya'an and the reply, Eliphaz Hatemani, Vayomer, right? So Vayomar. So and so the reply came from Eliphaz the Temanite. If one ventures a word with you, will it be too much? Right? Um, but who can hold back his words? Right? So what's he saying here?
May I say something?
Right. He's like, look, after what you said, I really want to say something. But he's also kind of afraid that what he's going to say, he already knows this is a bad comment to make pastorally. Here's another good thing. If you're ever visiting someone in the hospital or something, if you want to be pastoral in your care, if you think, maybe I shouldn't say this right now, don't say it.
Don't say it.
Mm-hmm. No need to. So my first thing when Eliphaz said this line, Miyuchal, who could stop? I'd say, you could. You could stop. You could stop right now. That's your choice. But Eliphaz is not going to stop. He doesn't wait for a response. He says, would you mind if I said something to you? But to be fair, who could stop themselves after what you've just said? So let me say something. And in verse 3, he's going to say, Hine, right? Pay attention. It's like he walks up. Now imagine you suffered what Job suffered, what Eob suffered, and your friend says, okay, I finally heard you. We sat for 7 days. He walks up to your face and goes, hey, buddy, that's what this guy is doing. Now, maybe if you were a good friend and you were a kind of rough and tumble guy, maybe this would be a fine way to get your attention in this situation. But I get the feeling Job is a lot more contemplative and introspective than that in general, and his friends should probably know that he won't respond well to whatever he's about to say. We don't even know yet what he's about to say. But just from the way he introduced it, we know it's not going to be good. Okay. Here he's going to, right? He's going to say in verse 3, see, you have encouraged Rabim, many. You have strengthened Tichazek, Yadim Rafot, or sickened or feeble hands. So you have strengthened failing hands, right? When you were the top of society, when you were rich and influential, you did good things. Verse 4, your words have kept him who stumbled from falling. You have braced knees that gave way. What is this in these two verses, verse 3 and 4? Before we get to the but, which I believe what everybody's mother said, where if you say but, nothing that you said before it matters. But so the but is coming, and you might disregard all of this, but for the moment, let's take him at face value. What do you notice in the phrasing of these compliments or these comments?
He's saying in a way, you who have been so knowledgeable, so giving, so loving, it isn't said yet, but you should know better. You have offered this to others.
Okay, so there's one thing it says you've seen people go through things like this, maybe not just like it, but you've seen, and you've been the one to strengthen them.
Right.
And so there is some degree of, again, remember Hasatan's point, he is kind of starting to intimate, leading towards his argument, which it could be, if you have done this before, how are you not able to, did you believe what you said to those people, right? It's like either you do believe or you don't believe. You're a believer. You've always been one. You said to all the people you love. But what else? And that's a great observation. What else do you notice about these particular these particular things, these particular comments?
He's saying you're a strong man and a teacher.
Okay, so he's saying you're a strong man and a teacher. That is true.
Is it saying that, my gosh, all those words you said before, if you can't live by your own advice, what does that say about your advice?
Yes, he is saying that, but I want you to look more at the words. What does it say? You encouraged many. Fine. You have strengthened failing hands. Okay, that's not me. Your words have kept him who stumbled from falling. You have braced knees that gave way. What it reminds me of is, let me turn to our prayer, the Givu wrote from the Amidah. You are forever mighty, Adonai. We're going to, just hit the side there to...
And will it work if I just sit?
Yeah, it'll just silence it. It won't even end the call. It'll just silence it. Thank you.
No,
You're good. So God does a lot of things. What does God do? Giving life to all, supporting the fallen, freeing the captive, keeping faith with those who sleep in the dust. It's a parallel to him living the life God wanted by emulating God, by doing these. These items are not chosen at random, is what I'm trying to get you to see. The things he's chosen to elevate about Job are the things Job did that emulated God, because he's going to make a theological argument. And I just don't want that to slide under your radar. I want you to track it. Yeah.
But the rabbis called Job a tzaddik.
You mean pre-disaster Job?
No, pre-disaster.
I mean, I think the answer might not change by the end of this, but
Yeah.
pre-disaster Job, maybe, especially if he gave them money. I'm just joking. I shouldn't say that. I'm on the internet. I shouldn't say that. It's a joke. I'm joking. No. The rabbis would say probably, yeah, because you're supposed to emulate God. God is perfect, and therefore the more you can emulate God by doing the great things we know God does, by trying to help in those ways, then yeah, if you feed the hungry and clothe the naked and uplift the fallen, which was one of the big things Job did, then yeah, you're emulating God, and that's good. We want you to do that.
And he doesn't seem to be driven in those days by
greed or money. Yeah, no, he's not avaricious. He's not
so-called animal self.
Right, he's not an impulsive. Right, he seems to have been a
non-narcissist.
Right, and yes, and your comments are correct. That the friend is now saying, you bought that, right? Like you believed what you said, which is a rude thing to say to someone who just lost his whole family.
Yeah.
But they waited for Shiva to be over at least. Right? I mean, they did Shiva with him. They sat Shiva, and then they were like, okay, now let's ridicule you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so verse 5. But now that it overtakes you, ki'ata, but now suffering overtakes you, and it's too much for you. You are, right? It touches you and you panic. It reaches you and you are unnerved. How is this possible? Verse 6, is not your piety your confidence, your integrity, your hope? Right? Steinsaltz his commentary has a translation that's slightly different. Shouldn't your reverence of God be your source of kislatecha, of security?
Mm-hmm.
Confidence is another way of, this is like when we were saying bitachon, that kind of like belief, security, that kind of thing. This is that word for that here, not in the Zohar or Musar sense,
Yes.
but in the ancient biblical sense. He would have said, so your security, kislatecha, right? And stability, your hope in the virtuousness of your way. You can rely on your perfect past behavior. You were perfect, right?
Mhm.
By the way, kislatecha is based on the word kesalim, the flanks, which are the strongest and most stable part of the animal, which is why the security, strength, fortitude, that's what it's referencing. Um, verse 7, right? He is trying to buck him up, though, right? He's not condemning him.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, man, you believe that, right? He's not saying it like, did you believe that? He's saying, you believe that, right? You were perfect. You did all this great stuff. God will be with you, right? There's this kind of why you should believe God will be with you.
Job
Right?
has not cursed God, never does.
He has not cursed God,
And,
no.
and he's just saying, this hurts so damn much, kill me.
Right.
Which is not the same as cursing God.
Right. But this guy is saying, you should be ready for a second act. Which, by the way, the funny thing is the first comment here is actually what ends up coming to pass in the end, right? Job gets a second act.
Yeah.
He gets a new family. He gets money. I mean, I'm just saying. So, like, he's kind of like, this is kind of the cheat sheet right here. Just do this. Like, this guy is like, but if you keep your faith, which you've always had, which you must really believe in, things will turn around for you again. You shouldn't despair this much if you really believe in God, is what he's saying. Now, I think that's cruel because no one who suffers as greatly as Job has suffered on this earth, again, losing your family except for your wife, losing your children and grandchildren, losing all of your money, all of your property, being in sackcloth and funerals, and that would devastate any human being. We're not angels. We're not God. We're not perfect.
But this time he's covered with boils.
Right, and he's ill. Right, yes, he's suffering. He's screaming. He's in pain.
Yeah.
He's cut. Right, he's now afflicted because Hasatan is allowed to afflict him. He's truly suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But this friend is saying a pious person would say it's not possible that in the end that this will be my end. So you shouldn't ask for death. Right? Because that's what really concerned him. That's why he said, Miyukal, who would be able to resist saying something to you when you say things like this?
But he didn't say at all, I'm going to kill myself.
He didn't say I'm going to kill myself, but I mean, let's put it this way. You're a psychiatrist. If somebody comes in and says, I'd really rather be dead, I really think that there's nothing for me in this world, they haven't told you that they're going to kill themselves. Oh, come on, Dr. Bradshaw. There's a decent shot they still might, right? Because they've said, right. All your worries are going to be going like this because they're saying all the right. So he's also worried because even though he hasn't said he's going to do it, he's giving all the indications that he's got. He's saying, I have nothing left to live for. It'd be better if I were dead. The dead don't suffer as much as I do. He's like rationalizing to himself throughout his speech why it might be better. And the friend is like, whoa, there's some things you cannot do, right? Pious people don't kill themselves, is kind of what he's saying. If I had to boil the friend's comment down to one line, it would be, you're a pious guy, and pious people don't kill themselves.
No,
Is what the friend is like boiling down to. He's saying a lot more than that, but if I had to boil it down, that's what I would go with. So now he's going to keep going with that thought, right? I love this. This is a derivative not of male, Zachor, Zachar, but of, it is Zachor. It's a shortening of memory of Zachor. So, Zachar na, right? Na, right? Our word for urgent thing, please, right? Our word for please that's urgent in the Bible. What did Moses say when his sister was afflicted with, also happened to be with tzaraat, with skin disease?
leprosy, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, we call it tzaraat. Some people translate that as leprosy. It's an ancient skin disease. We really don't know what it was. Again, their limbs never fell off, so I don't really know what leprosy is, to be fair. Anyway, but this isn't tzaraat necessarily, but it's similar in that case. And what did Moses say to God? We actually got two nas in it. El na God, please. Rafanallah. Heal her now. Please heal her now. Please, God, please heal her now. This is so I'm just, again, I like to bring up where words come in similar places. Sometimes it can help with our understanding if at all possible. So he says here, think now. Think, please. Right? Please be thinking very seriously. What innocent, who is the innocent who perished? Now again, he says, was anyone who suffered ever entirely innocent? Is essentially what he's saying. Then he says, where have the upright been destroyed? He's saying the upright are never destroyed. Verse 8, as I have seen, those who plow evil and sow mischief reap them. Verse 9, they perish by a blast from the divine, are gone at the breath of God's nostrils. I don't really love the phrase God's nostrils because that's a little too personified for me, but fine. What are we saying here? This is, of course, the great conflict of the book, right? I'm just standing because I need a little
you get what you deserve, you must have done something bad.
Theodicy, the big question of the book, right? Theodicy, divine justice. He's saying those who are good don't suffer like this. Right? He's saying the bad are punished and the good are rewarded. That is, I venture to say, the most rudimentary, most childlike view of theodicy. The idea that all the good get good and all the bad get bad, and it's all divvied up just like that, exactly when it should be, is a child's view of theodicy. It's not reflective of so many nuances of how human beings live, how God views how God views our actions, and it presumes so much about theodicy that we can't possibly know. Yeah.
Is not the Holocaust a great naysayer to that idea?
I mean that idea specifically, but a 5-year-old doesn't know about the Holocaust, right? I would say that's the thing. A child doesn't understand that it's more complicated than that, which is, again, Holocaust is a great challenge to, and especially to the mid-century Jewish theologians like Heschel. The Holocaust was a great challenge to their belief in theodicy, because then again, some of them embraced theodicy more afterwards, like Elie Wiesel. Why? I mean, the Allies won, right? I mean, it could have been worse. I mean, that was kind of the perspective from the people who took the perspective of, at least we won, and we won the next, well, it didn't turn out to be a full century. It turned out we only got about 60 years before we gave up the country anyway. But at the time, we could have lost and the country could have been Nazi or something. So then the Jews would have just been dead. So there's theodicy is very complicated. And needs to take into account, of course, that on Earth, free will is an important restrainer of theodicy being implemented on Earth. In that God has agreed, God made a deal with us, that God wouldn't interfere with free will.
Even the free will of Hitler?
Yes, even the free will of Hitler and Goebbels. Right, yes, that's the extension of that. Right.
I mean, there was a rabbi.
To be fair, God also doesn't control the free will of all the guys who tried to kill Hitler. They just failed. but had they succeeded in 1937, then we would have never, the rest of that might not have happened. You know what I mean? So like it's what happens. You know what I mean? Like it's more complicated than just the good get good, the bad get bad as soon as good or bad happens. But that seems to be this guy's theology around theodicy.
there was a book written, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Famously,
I can't remember the rabbi, but his solution was basically deistic. God did it and just sort of left.
Well, I mean, so I don't agree with that because my version of theodicy has God coming back in on the back end
God's there.
and
He never
divvying
left
up
in
punishments
the
in Sheol or in the liminal space between this life and what comes after. Theoretically, God gets up to a year to do whatever to you in Sheol, so be good. But in any event, it's not hell and you're not there forever. So, you know, it's we just have never had that concept. So there is the concept of Gehenna, the idea that there are some souls that are condemned for a much longer period of time, I guess, but I'm not an expert on any of that, so I can't really speak to it. Gehenna is the closest thing we have to hell. Gehenna was a valley, Gehinnom is a valley burning, where the Canaanites the Jebusites rather, who lived in Jerusalem before, it's one of the valleys, the Kidron Valley and the Gehinnom Valley are the two valleys that Jerusalem is built on like a spear head. It meets in a point essentially. It's the whole area is mountainous, and there are two valleys that run through to the point, and so it's a very defensible city because it's up on this point. In one of those two valleys, the Gehinnom Valley, the Jebusites who lived there before David conquered the city would burn children to Molech, would pass them through the fire, so to speak. Because of this, that imagery of burning in fire translated to Jewish thoughts about this metaphysical place, Gehenna, which you can tell shares a diminutive name from the name of the valley. And from there, early Christians would take that idea and eventually embellish it into what they, hell and all that. So the idea starts in Judaism, but it's very different. Okay. So we're in verse 10 now. The lion may roar, the cub may howl, but the teeth of the king of beasts are broken. This is right. I don't understand. Let me look up the note here. It says the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. The Steinsaltz translation says, even the initial manifestation of divine rage affects the strongest creatures, as immediately in response, the roar of the lion and the voice of the great cat are heard, and the teeth of the lion cubs are broken. In other words, again, what is he saying about the Odyssey? It happens, and it happens quick, right? It says, the lion perishes for lack of prey, and its whelps are scattered. Right? When God roars, even those who consider themselves as strong as lions are broken and destroyed. There's always a bigger lion, I guess. Yeah.
Are we to assume that lions that roar but don't have teeth did something wrong? Last I looked, animals sort of acted on
I don't know. I mean,
stuff. I mean, it's a nice metaphor.
It's a metaphor, right? I wouldn't think that deeply.
No.
Even the most powerful is helpless at times.
Yeah, no, that I buy.
Yeah. And here, this is very interesting what he's going to say in verse 12. The Eli Davar, right? A word came to me, Yigunav, right? What is Ganav? You know, yeah.
Is that a theft?
Thief.
Yeah.
A Ganav is a thief.
Yeah, thief.
Ganav means to steal. When it says here, the Eli Davar, and to me, a word was stolen unto me. That's why it says stealth. He came to me in stealth. He is indicating here that he is imbued with a heavenly spirit. He is describing a prophetic vision he received that referred to the secrets behind events that occur in the world. As is the case for other Gentile prophets, his prophetic experience occurred in the middle of the night. he's a Gentile, I guess you should know. He's a Temanite, they're not Jews. So this is just, he's just not a Jewish guy. But he had a prophetic experience, which is not the only time a non-Jew has a prophetic experience. But again, apparently they only happen in the middle of the night, and he doesn't get it directly. He can only recall a trace of it, like in a dream. That's why he says, it came to me, it was stolen unto me, right? It was like barely perceivable. I almost had to eavesdrop to hear this dream, right? Like, so that's kind of what he's getting. He's saying, my ear caught a whisper of it. Verse 13, he's going to now tell this story. He says, in thought-filled visions of the night, when deep sleep falls on everyone, fear and trembling came upon me, causing all my bones to quake with fright. A wind, a ruach, passed by my face, making the hair of my flesh bristle. It halted. Its appearance was strange to me. Right? I could tell that it, whatever it was, would stop, but I would not recognize its appearance. It was a form before my eyes, but I did not know what it was. I would hear silence and a voice. Right? Like a voice came from within the silence. What does that sound like? The bat kol, a still small voice, was heard. Still small, just double diminutive, not just Elijah. That's a lot of places. The bat kol's all over the place when a divine voice comes down. But in any event, yes, it's certainly there as well. So he's describing this moment, and he says, will a human be more can a mortal be acquitted by God? Can a man be cleared by his maker? Right? How can a man be pure when faced with God? Right? Can a human be more just than God? No. If God's own servants cannot be trusted, and angels receive reproach, how much less, this is one of our Kal Vachomer situations, how much less so those who dwell in houses of clay, whose origin is dust, who are crushed like the moth. Right? If the angels fail, we don't have a chance. Right? Is what he's saying. Shattered between daybreak and evening, perishing forever, unnoticed.
Right?
Yeah.
This is almost a Jewish version of original sin.
Well, this guy's not Jewish, so let's temper that.
Okay. No, but
Yeah.
that was a big thing.
Yes, I know. You're right. And this is contemplating an idea, again, wisdom. This is contemplating an idea, not about original sin, not saying we're born, because I don't think they'd say a baby is messed up in any way, and you're not even responsible for your own sins until you're 13. So I don't think they would, this has nothing to do with original sin, but it does have to do with something that original sin also deals with, which is the inherent corruptibility of humanity. Right? Original sin says you're just corrupted from the beginning, just like ab initio, you're just always corrupted. Judaism says, in this case, this is offering that the world will inevitably corrupt all humans because humans can't reach that level. Even though we're supposed to emulate God, we can't obviously ever. We know we can never reach that. And so when compared, if the standard is meeting God, if the standard is that you're at the level of God, there's no hope for you. You're never going to be God. You're never going to be as good as God. You're never going to be as just as God. You're never going to be as knowledgeable as God. You're never going to have any of that as God. Right? You're just not. So anyway, we're talking here, right? So for people, and in this one, it's saying for people, but what starts in the morning as a mere crack in their world can turn into a complete rupture by night. And humanity lost forever without anyone paying attention to that. It's just like this. He's talking about so many people, really. Their cord is pulled up and they die, and not with wisdom. We're bringing the word wisdom in here, chokhmah. So yeah, we've got chokhmah here. So we want we want to talk a little bit about wisdom here. It says their cord is pulled up. That's I don't like that translation at all. Steinsaltz says, hasn't their remnant gone away from them? Which makes more sense. Alternatively, when God brings tragedy upon people, aren't their remains scattered? Think back, we just covered what in the book of Kings? Isabel? What happened to Isabel?
Eaten by dogs.
Not just eaten.
Her blood was licked.
No, they took the parts out to the fields and stuff. They ripped her apart and she was spread all over the countryside, her bones, because of the dogs. Worse even than what you're saying. And that's the same imagery that were that you could see here. They're ruined and eradicated, ultimately dying without wisdom. So again, and then Steinsaltz summarizes by saying, in his dispute with God, man, who is small and lowly in comparison, will never emerge triumphant. Right? If we're comparing ourselves to God. So he's not done. We're turning now to chapter 5, but he's still giving his charge now, I guess, of his prophetic sermon. He says, Karana, call, please, or call now. I don't know why they're trying Nas now, but that's fine. Call now. Will anyone answer you? To whom among the holy beings will you turn? Vexation kills the fool. Passion or envy. It's funny because what does it say here actually? V'harag ka'as. Wow. Okay, so that's got to be vexation. Ufoteh tamim kin'ah, right? That's so it says the translation here says passion slays the simpleton, but I like envy better personally. Envy will put the simpleton or the simple one, tamim, it says, so simple people, Tom, will put them to death, essentially. Why? Because they're never going to be smart enough or good enough to get those things. They're just going to want and want and want, and they'll turn it into that guy in Kohelet that he says, just kept chasing and chasing and chasing, and so his life was hevel. That's kind of the parallel here. That's the wisdom crossover. So yeah. Verse 3, Ani ra'iti, evil, but not evil. I myself saw a fool who had struck roots. Impulsively, I cursed his home. Right? I saw a fool and he was suddenly doing well. He was suddenly developing, growing. And so I cursed his house, with a calamity should suddenly fall upon it and halt his development. I said, may his children be far from success. May they be oppressed in the gate with none to deliver them. May the hungry devour his harvest, carrying it off in baskets. May the thirsty swallow their wealth. It's funny because in a way he's, again, describing from Kohelet. Remember, Kohelet said you might be rich and well established, but then your children will come along and throw it all away. So it's, again, I just want to point out these mirrors to you of the wisdom of Kohelet, reflecting, even if not clearly, in the wisdom of Job. Right. So may the thirsty swallow their wealth. Evil does not grow out of the soil, nor does mischief spring from the ground. Right? Nature doesn't sin. For people are born to do mischief, just as sparks fly upwards. Right? And of course, if you start a fire, you always see sparks fly upwards. It's natural. It's always true. Just like it's always true that man was born to do evil and sin. It's unfortunately our inclination. But I would resort to God. I would lay my case before God, unlike the foolish or simple person, who performs great deeds that cannot be fathomed, wondrous things without number. And this was almost liturgy. We say things like this, right? In Micha Mocha, we say, who is like you, performing wonders without number? And there you go. That's where, right? Niflaot, right? Niflaot, wonders. Who gives rain to the earth and sends water over the fields? Who raises the lowly up high so that the dejected are secure in victory? Who thwarts the designs of the crafty so that their hands cannot gain success? Right? They hear this is a meritocracy thing almost. They don't like the clever. They don't like tricksters. It's an interesting no. Who traps the clever in their own wiles? The plans of the crafty go awry. By day they encounter darkness. At noon they grope as in the night. Another phrase that we've seen from Solomon. But God saves the needy from the sword of their mouth, from the clutches of the strong. So there is hope for the wretched. The mouth of wrongdoing is stopped. What does that mean? The mouth of wrongdoing is stopped. Or sin, olata, the sin or the iniquity, will close its mouth. Kaftsapia.
I think he's going back to what you've said all along. You should have faith in God because God will deliver you.
People's fortunes change. I get it. He's like, yo, man, I get it. This has been bad.
Yeah.
But like, it went that bad. It went that good and then that bad. It could go again. It could go that good again. This game is not over. Your life isn't over. Someone pious who believes in God, a wise person, says, I will do the mourning that I should do because that's good for me and does honor to their souls. And then it's time to get back out there. It's time to not get out there dating, I don't mean. Like get out there and work, get out there and do something. Call your connections, figure something out, see a doctor, get yourself ready for, you know what I mean? Again, Jewish mourning is meant to bring you to that point. So it's why we use Job so much in funerals. Because people are in that moment. We say, I always give this line from Job, and it's a great one. I say it twice in a service. Adonai natan va'adonai lakach. Yehi shem Adonai mevarach. They said, you said that. You should stick to that, is what this friend is saying. That's the right way to be. God gave, God take away. Blessed is the name of God. Yeah.
What you just said speaks so much to what my current experience is. You know, times feeling my life is done. There's no point anymore. But then saying to myself again, hey, yes, you're sad, but don't lose your faith. And that's exactly what.
Yeah, it's hard because it's so hard because despair. Again, sadness is one thing. People are sad when their team loses a game. People are sad when an election doesn't go their way. I'm pretty sad about all the communists that are taking over New York City. But that's not the same thing as despair. Despair, again, is a grief. And grief is unpredictable, hard to deal with, and especially hard to deal with rationally. And so another reason why, even though I agree with a lot of what the friend is saying, he's a real dummy to say any of it. None of it's pastoral. Why? Because this guy can't hear it right now. This is not the moment for that. There's a moment for this speech. Maybe it's 3 months down the road. It's not really now. Now at the end of Shiva, when you're still in Shloshim, is not when you're just taking the black off the mirrors, is not the time. Everything has its time and season. if we remember the wisdom of Kohelet.
Right.
And this might be the right advice at the wrong time. So yeah. See how happy, verse 17, is the person whom God reproves. Right? Do not reject suffering, as it is part of God's communication with man. He says, Hine again, behold, how happy is the person whom God rebukes. Do not reject the discipline of the Almighty. Right?
It seems that he's counseling patience.
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
And
In a much longer speech, he's saying the game. This is a very long game, and it's a very long game, and you're still in the middle of it, and you've taken a real hit, and it's terrible. I think you could say that a couple more times to me.
My family used to talk about the patience of Job.
Right.
Well, his patience right now is with his friends. He's got to have a lot of patience, not just with the situation, but with his friends.
Well, his friends.
The friend is still talking. He's been talking for 2 chapters. By the way,
out of sync.
The friend has said a lot more than Job has. Yeah.
He's out of sync with Job's action.
Yes, exactly. He's out of sync with where Job is in the mourning process. He's not showing wisdom, even though what he's saying is true. Nothing he said is incorrect.
Just wrong time.
Right, but the timing is very bad. What does he say in 18? Because he injures, but also, or God injures, but also binds up, also bandages. God's hands wound, but also heal. Right? He says, look, this is the trouble with theodicy. The trouble sorry, I shouldn't say that because you might struggle with theodicy, and that's fine. I'm saying because he was saying it was the stupid and the simple who don't get theodicy. So I was using that phrasing, but excuse me. He's saying here, some people don't understand, but if everything is up to God, then the bad things and the good things are. And we have to learn how to deal. We can't just accept, this is a good note, because again, this is true. We can't just accept the good things and say those come from God. Quite frankly, and this will be on the internet, and I don't even care, Christians did a great disservice to every Christian who's ever lived by taking the idea of things that are bad coming from God away and giving it all to Satan or something.
No, giving it to
By saying all the bad is over there, they've actually created a duality, a dualism, right? They've got two divine figures almost.
Right.
One that does bad, which is Satan, and one that does good, which is God. And we don't do that in Judaism. There's only one God. That means the difficulty with that is you don't get to say, God loves me and is with me. Ooh, but that's Satan. He'll come for you. You don't get to say any of that. All the bad things come from the same source as all the good things. That's a lot more difficult to deal with theologically than dualism. Dualism is easy. You just put good on one side and bad on the other and try to stay on this side as much as you can. Theodicy with one God is really hard because you have to deal with this. God's hands wound, but also heal.
It is interesting that growth and development, according to Melanie Klein, is we have the good and bad mother, and the real growth is when we can understand it's the good mother that is also the bad mother.
Yeah.
And then he says, there the work begins.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think Melanie Klein was
and I think you have to accept this. It's true about every person,
right.
too. And so learning this about God helps you deal with people, helps you deal with the reality of the world. If you pretend that every person can be put into a camp of the righteous or the evil, that doesn't really deal with 99.9% of humanity.
It's my assumption that Melanie Klein was Jewish.
Yeah, Melanie Klein sounds pretty Jewish, to be fair. But she might have been secular. I don't know that she had any religious understanding.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying, regardless of her ethnicity or religious observance, is that doing theodicy in the Jewish way helps you deal with human beings.
Mhm.
Doing theodicy in a dualist way, I'm not saying Christians, I don't believe are dualists in the end. I think that they're using metaphors in ways that I think go too far. But I don't think they really hold Satan to the same level of deistic ability as
the
God.
first 25 pages of Paradise Lost are all about.
Well, that's I don't believe while I'm sure lots of high schoolers still have to read it, I'm not sure it's Christian theology. I'm not sure Milton is good is a perfect example of Christian theology.
Maybe he was blind to theology.
I'm just saying I'm not gonna blame Christians for Milton. That's for Milton's view on Satan. That's Milton's problem, and Milton can deal with that on his own. He's entitled to his book and his opinion. I don't know what to say, but I'm not gonna blame Christians for that. Just the other stuff.
It helps me accept me by knowing that God has the good and the bad, because I've had to come to accept my own inadequacies.
Very true.
And so this is,
Yeah, I think that's true too. Not just with other human beings. When I say it helps you deal with humanity, not just others, but yourself too.
Exactly.
You shouldn't put yourself, he's saying, into the camp of a perfect. He said this earlier. He said, if you measure yourself against God, you will always fail. Right? So he's saying you should not put yourself into either camp, the camp of the evil or the camp, because those camps don't really exist. They're comforting things for us to think exist because humans like black and white.
Right.
They like categorization and they like neat lines. They don't like that every human being is messy. Unfortunately, that's reality. So we have to deal with that. And Jewish theology around theodicy is designed to help you do that. Not only with God, but to understand we all contain multitudes. As we are merely, made in God's image. So this is the very difficult thing. God's hands wound, but they also heal. And we have to understand that the God who loves you can hurt you. And then we struggle with the bigger question. Why? Why? I don't mean to do that pastor from that meme. There's a meme video, this one televangelist pastor, I assume, from years ago. And it's just him. He says why in a very weird way. It's kind of a southern drawl. So he says like, why? And so he says it, and it's just him doing it like 7 times in a row. It's just like, why? It's just, I'm sorry. I should pull it up because now I'm just sitting here like yelling at you about it.
Of course, the answer is why not, but
Why?
It's just why? It's just the same thing over and over again. Anyway, my point of that was that's why I did that, and I said why? Because I'm raised by memes. Like all the Gen Z kids, I guess. Okay. So why is the big question? Right? It's okay once you get to the point of even accepting.
God would be kind.
There you go. There's still people here. I messed up.
What?
There's still people in the office. I thought Tracy and Lindsay had gone, so I thought that there was no one that was going to get the door. Okay. So, what was I saying? Was I saying something?
The big question of why.
The question of why, right? Once you can get to the step of accepting the messiness of it all, then the question is, well, why isn't it clear? That seems like a really weird way to do things. And of course, free will is the answer to why it isn't. One of the answers to why it isn't clear. We're still in this guy's his lucid dream. You will be delivered from 6 troubles. In 7, no harm will touch you. Don't take the numbers literally. 6 and 7 are generic numbers that symbolize large quantities. So you will be delivered from many troubles, and in many, no harm will reach you. In famine, you will be redeemed from death. In war, from the sword. You will be sheltered from the scourging tongue. Libel, right? God will protect you when people utter hurtful or damaging comments about you. You will have no fear when violence comes. which no Jew in Europe ever got from the pogroms. But that's what he means. Like if people come to pillage your town, you'll be good. You will laugh at violence and starvation, and have no fear of wild beasts. For you will have a pact with the rocks in the field of Ne Hasadeh, and the beasts of the field, Ad Ne Hasadeh, or Hayat Hasadeh, sorry, will be your allies. You will know that all is well in your tent. When you visit your wife, you will never fail. Not yet being in my 50s, this isn't something, thankfully, I've ever had to struggle with, but I understand, I guess, what he's referring to. As these are also men who have grandchildren. We can only assume, without modern pharmaceuticals, what he could be referring to. But everything will remain intact for you. You will see that your offspring are many, your descendants like the grass of the earth. I like grass of the earth. Some people, they're like, what's the thing, of course, that we're told? I think grass of the earth is more than what Abraham was promised. What was Abraham that it would be? No, stars are more, sorry.
Stars and sand.
Sand on the sand of the sea. And then grass of the earth is like the opposite of that, right? Is like like sand of the sea, and then it's grass of the earth, right? It's literally if you took it and flipped it upside down, that's what it would be. You will come to the grave in ripe old age, as shocks of grain are taken away in their season. See, we have inquired into this, and it is so. Hear it and accept it. So he's saying, the friend Eliphaz is ending his speech saying, this is the way of the world. Ultimately, the pure and upright person will not be lost, unlike fools. Consider my comments in a personal context as well. Eliphaz is implicitly saying to Job, if you accept that God has intentionally inflicted this suffering upon you, and you submit to it, you will experience salvation in your lifetime. God will restore you to all that you have lost, and you will enjoy a good end.
But am I right in thinking he's not implying in that don't let yourself suffer? I think what he's saying,
give in to the embrace the suffering,
yeah,
right?
You will suffer, but
there's a reason for the suffering, right?
Yes.
He's doing theodicy in one of the ways you do that some people do theodicy. You suffer because you did something wrong. If you accept that, embrace it, and move forward as a pious man, God may yet restore all that you have lost. It's a little different than what ends up happening, but isn't so far off from what ends up happening, right? In the end, in Job, he doesn't give up God, and he does. That redemption comes to pass. Now, none of them can see what's happening above, which itself is a meta lesson of this book. Mm-hmm. They don't know that this is all because of a bet between God and Hasatan. They don't have any idea. They think that Eliphaz here, his Gentile friend, who, by the way, is like the best Jew I've ever seen for a Gentile, he's sitting here like, you should have faith in God. I'm like, whoa, easy there, man. And I'm the rabbi. And it's like, there's a joke. That's actually stealing a joke. Jim Gaffigan used to tell a joke like 20 years ago, because he's Catholic. And he would tell a joke where he would say, one of the most off-putting things someone can say to you is come up to you and say, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus? And he would say, even if you went up to the Pope and said, hi, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus? That the Pope would say, easy, freak. I keep work at work. Mm-hmm. This is a Jim Gaffigan joke. I didn't make it up. But so I was riffing off that by being like, this non-Jewish guy is like really pious. And he's like, look, if you keep your piety, if you keep together, if you hold and endure, things will work out for you. Which, again, in a weird way, this is not a pastoral comment. This is not the right time for this comment. I, once again, will repeat, I don't think it's wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything he said is wrong. It's all wisdom. I just think it was delivered very inartfully at a bad time. I think the timing and message were wrong for the intended recipient. That doesn't mean that anything he said theologically is mistaken. Now, there are a couple things he said theologically that are mistaken, which I believe the main one is that suffering comes from sin.
Mm-hmm.
That you always, again, he has a very narrow view of theodicy where the bad get bad and the good get good. So you must have messed up. And if you just persevere and admit that and stick with God, but implicit in that comment is admit you were wrong about what Job can't fathom. And then you'll get it. You'll get things back, and you'll be happy again. Yeah.
Don't all of his friends take that position?
We'll get there. First, we'll have to get, not today, but first we'll have to get Job's response to Eliphaz, and then the arguments will continue. Obviously, it's not the world's shortest book like Kohelet, which is only 8 or 9 chapters. Yeah.
Well, let me tease out something.
Yeah.
Good and bad come from God. So if you're suffering, if you're experiencing bad in your life, that's coming from God.
Yeah.
But yet that's very different from saying, I think, that acted has brought that upon you.
I agree. Those are two separate statements.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I agree. You have to see everything as coming from God in a pious mindset.
Yeah.
So the good and the bad. The question again is why, not who, not from where.
Right.
Those I agree with you on. We're already set on those questions. Question that we're dealing with in Job is going to be why.
Mm-hmm.
Why do bad things happen to good people? To quote the book. Why does Job have to suffer in what feels like an unfair situation? Because again, Job, as we understand, did nothing wrong, and this is a bet.
It is an unfair situation.
Right, it's an unfair situation. And so you can't react to it as if this is not, so maybe that itself is the inner wisdom. This story is not reflective of theodicy. It teaches us about theodicy without being reflective of it. These friends get the opportunity to share these messages, and they don't help Job because they were never meant to. They were meant to help you.
Yes.
And they help us. They help us by our struggling with them.
Yes, by learning the wisdom of them.
Yeah.
By the way, they help us already, as I've already said, because we use them in funerals.
Yeah.
Because the wisdom of them is so clear to us that they're the words we offer to mourners when they're mourning. And if that alone were the wisdom we got from it, that would be enough. Diana. It would be enough for us. But it gives us more than that. It gives us an understanding, a deepening, a contemplation of theodicy that we don't have as much of in other places. Hence why this book has such an important place in the wisdom literature. Because it deals with the nature of suffering in a way none of our other books do. And it really can give you a framework for how to deal with suffering in your own life, including death, the worst suffering when other people die, it is the worst suffering that we can encounter. In fact, we see this in different places. Job essentially says in his speech, right? It would have been better if I were dead and they were alive, right? Because then I wouldn't have to suffer. The dead don't suffer, he says. Only me who has to sit here. My whole family is dead. Me, I just sit here and in pain and scream and endure. And the friend says, just stick it out. And this guy's gonna sit here and be like, "Are you my friend? What the like again?" Because from his perspective, he didn't do anything. This is unjust, which he will eventually, in his last speech, we will get him finally admitting and saying fully, "I feel this is that I didn't deserve what I was given." He won't condemn God, but he will say, "Look, I don't know what you're up to, God, but I don't think I deserved this." And he won't be wrong.
Yeah.
As we said, the overriding logic of it is that this is an unfair situation teaching you about God's fairness, which itself is kind of hard because God is instituting this. But it couldn't be anyone else. Because as we said, The good and the bad both have to come from God. So this situation had to be instigated by God. If it was instigated by an angel without God's permission, we wouldn't learn the lesson because the same lesson wouldn't exist. God does this, and we have to wrestle with that too. Now, again, I say in the end, this is the trick of theodicy, of divine justice. Is it fair what God does to Job? I'm going to present to you at the end of this book that my answer is yes. Is it fair for Job? No. But there's a reason. And the reason, again, I've kind of alluded to it already, but we'll discuss it more at the end of the book. The reason is because human beings fail in theodicy, in understanding theodicy for many, many reasons. The chief reason among them is linear time. You think that things, again, this guy presents that bad things, you do something bad, bad things happen to you. And these things are linear. They happen maybe even in your lifetime. But what if God was thinking about this in an entirely different way? What if God invited Hasatan to, sorry, my wife is in a Hebrew class with a very rich lady. And this woman said, it's very funny. I won't say her name because I don't want to do Lashon Hara. But she said, living in Cape Cod during the summer is like living in Ethiopia, which is a crazy thing to say. Like 7,000 reasons, but never mind. I just saw that and I was like, whoa, you should go talk to Job.
Yeah,
Right. Right? It's like, okay, that's okay. Anyway, but so theodicy is hard to understand because the balance of the justice of it has to be seen in a lot bigger scale than the lifetime of one person. This is kind of like I sometimes have to reference the butterfly effect to get this across. I can't say that one bad thing happening to an otherwise good person is just on its own. But again, it's like we always go to Hitler because that's the top thing, right? But like, what if Hitler's dad had lost his wife to something and people would have said, oh, that's not fair. But then Hitler wasn't born.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have been just? These are the things we have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
What's unjust to one man or one woman? What is the scope of history? What does God think about that instance? I'm not applying this to Job. I already said Job's situation is unique because of the contest, the argument. But the Odyssey is not as simple as people like to think. It's very complicated, and we're going to get into, as we continue to go through this book, just how complicated it is. I thank you, everyone who joined us online. Oh, we're frozen now. That's not good. Well, thank you, everyone, as I'm freezing on the screen. Thank you for joining us online, if you can still hear me, for joining us in Topeka, Kansas, for Torah, for the book of Job this Wednesday. We hope you'll join us on, well, next